March 29th. Wait for Cecil to come in. Could play some music for you, Cecil.
Saved you the low chair, you know how much you care.
All right. So as I call to order the Thursday, March 29th, 2018 Tiverton Budget Committee meeting. Could stand and pledge allegiance to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Paul?
Present.
Mrs. Jocelyn?
Present.
Mrs. Janet?
Present.
Mr. Leonard?
Present.
Myself present. Mr. McNally?
Here.
Mr. Edwards?
Present.
Mrs. Hollenbach?
Present.
Mr. Katz?
Present.
Ms. Roshley?
Present.
Mr. Cody? We have a full house.
Great. Any public comment? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to note, I have to sneak out at about 6:30, so it's not, nobody said anything that offended me, I just had to go. And I'll try to get back, but I may not.
Okay, great, thank you. We had been in touch with the town tax assessor, Dave Robbitt, and knew that tonight he would not have an update. I'll make sure if there's Tuesday or Thursday, we have any updates. Is that correct, Dave?
It is correct.
Nothing new for us tonight.
Nothing new tonight.
Great, thank you. Okay. And then as we move to item 3, tonight's goal will be, so I think we've covered the expense items through our votes throughout, but that there were discussions primarily around revenue that we last meeting had talked about trying to get some people to come in to help us understand some of the estimates and all. And tonight the town administrator has asked the police chief and perhaps the fire chief to give us, to talk to us about some of the thinking around detail work for the casino. So with that start, I don't know, Jan, if you would like to come first, or Chief Jones, or...
Yes, briefly, please. And also, I don't know if you've distributed that?
Not yet.
Not yet, okay. If I could take that up, that this is about the document that David, that Mike requested and that Nancy has provided, which is her working draft update of where we currently, or where you currently stand with the budget. She just wants to make clear that that's not an official draft, not an official submittal to the committee. She's a little worried about it being taken the wrong way. It's simply to be helpful. This is what she has been able to do to reflect the changes or the decisions that you've been made to date. With respect to the questions that you have, which I think relate to things like detail revenue, the one thing I wanted to mention is starting with, because there are some issues that may be the same as for incorporating gaming revenue into the budget. And I believe most, if not all of you, have seen a copy of a memo that the solicitor had provided in October, which I only saw 2 days ago, I believe, which opines that gaming revenue is non-tax revenue that under the charter cannot be considered by the budget committee in developing the budget. And that according to the charter, there are only the 3 categories of tax revenue that can be considered on the revenue side. So that's a little confusing. The follow-up question could be, well, and that therefore the authority is for the council to adopt an ordinance allocating monies that otherwise would go into the general fund. That's apparently the proper procedure. The question then becomes, well, if that applies to gaming revenue, could apply to other non-tax revenue. And of course, there's if I'm not mistaken, a longstanding tradition to include various categories of fees and fines. So according to Tony, there's no clear line, and it's difficult to draw it, that there's a structural issue with the way the charter is drafted. I just wanted to bring that to your attention, which unfortunately probably complicates the discussions, but I just want to make sure that that's where we are in that.
Great, thank you.
Can I
That
just,
is also a qualification of what the chiefs will have to offer on the revenue from details.
Understood.
can I just clarify? Is that because of charter or is that state law?
The charter,
That's the charter.
yes.
And we weren't, just for the committee to know and the audience, tried to get the town solicitor to come tonight to help us with that. Couldn't get it, but we'll be here Tuesday, or we'll actually be in the high school library to talk about this. So I think with that caveat, tonight's discussion of talking with both of the chiefs and Representative Edwards just came here, is that we'll have more information hopefully from the solicitor's office about their opinion looking at revenue. So tonight, I think, is to ask our questions, knowing that further information might change how we can look at it. So with that, I'd welcome Chief Jones, and congratulations.
Thank you.
So where we're at, Chief, is looking at, as I mentioned, I started out, is revenue and the different sources that the committee has looked at. In the budget submitted by the town administrator and the town council, I don't believe that there was any estimates for detail work related to the casino. Is that correct?
That is correct.
That's correct. All right. With that, we're all trying to guess. We know it's going to open. We don't know exactly when. I think the committee, it would be helpful of understanding when it does open, what assumptions are you running on in terms of the number of personnel, revenue expectations that we might want to know about. So that's the context and all. And if you have either an opening or some comments that you want to do, and I'd certainly give opportunity for the committee members to ask.
Of course, Mr. Chairman. So I'm sure that some of you, or if not most of you, have seen the prospectus that was prepared at the request of the treasurer for us to forecast certain revenues that are coming in to the town from the police department, some of which VIN inspections, detail being one of them, dog fines, dog boards, different fees that we charge for copies of accident reports. So when I put this together at the time, you'll have to forgive me as I was the acting chief. And it was basically what we use as a baseline for all of these, between a 10 to 15% increase, which is pretty historic from what we've seen in the past. That did not include any casino revenue. So for 2017, there was in private police detail approximately $12,000. I forecasted a little over 15. So in speaking with the security at Twin River, and I'll put some disclaimers in there too, they are anticipating having at least one Tiverton police officer there 24 hours a day. And the disclaimers are, one, as we all know, the hours of the casino have not been determined yet. So I am basing my estimates on a 24-hour operation. That could change. Also, we are currently in collective negotiations with the collective bargaining with the police union. So that number could change as far as a prospectus as to exactly what would count for the detail and how the detail would operate. So that language will be incorporated into collective bargaining. But using as a framework the current language of the collective bargaining, assuming that it would carry over in some basic foundational form, officers get paid $45 an hour. They get a 2-hour show-up fee. So if the detail were to cancel. Anything over 8 hours becomes $67.50, which basically is calculated as overtime. $67.50.
And that's over how many hours?
That's the 9th hour. So up until the 8th hour, it's $45 an hour. Now we charge, that's the baseline for this detail because it is a private entity. We charge $34 an hour for any town detail. Any town detail, we also don't charge any cruiser fees. So it's a less, when I say a town detail, DPW contracts with someone to do water work, so it's $34 an hour for any town entity, even if it's like the water department, like a quasi-governmental agency. But any private detail, Verizon, National Grid, in this case the casino, would be $45 an hour. What I would recommend, again, based on the disclaimers that I already mentioned, that we would have a 24-hour operation with one detail officer present at the casino, in 8-hour shifts. So we wouldn't get into that overtime. And that would be $45 an hour.
Chief, the 2-hour show-up fee, that's not a minimum, right? That's, if you work 2 hours, you don't get it.
It is a minimum, actually. So, and the reason
Well,
why
I mean,
that,
if you work 1, you get that 2 hours worth, but if you work 3, you don't get an additional 2 for showing that.
that's correct.
Okay.
So the reason why that's in the collective bargaining is DOT, National Grid is notorious. If the weather changes and they schedule the detail and the officer shows up, but they don't notify the department and the officer's waiting on the detail, the officer gets paid for 2 hours.
Okay.
So, but in this case with the casino, we don't anticipate that being an issue.
Right.
So with that would, basically an 8-hour detail would come out to about $360 for an 8-hour shift. What the town does do now is charge on top of the $45. The actual rate charged by the town to the vendor is $54 an hour, which includes 7.65% for federal income tax, and then the town's administrative fee. I know the Lincoln Town Administrator gave a presentation to the council, and a lot of this would mirror what Lincoln is currently doing. They actually charge $1 or $2 extra to cover because of the workman's comp issue in Rhode Island. Lincoln Police and the town of Lincoln actually charge an extra $1 or $2 to cover in the event that an officer or an employee gets injured while at the casino. That money would be used to offset the workman's compensation. But that would be something that would be a discussion with the town administrator and potentially the police union. But for right now, using the numbers that we currently use for the detail, it's $54 an hour. So to do some rough numbers, which I can provide to you as a breakdown. So for a one-day detail, to pay the officer would be $1,080. To pay the FICA, the federal income, $82.62. This would be for a 24-hour period. And the general fund, or the revenue from the administrative fees, would be $123.38. Now, the other item that I did not mention is when we more than likely will be utilizing a police vehicle at this detail. We currently charge $20 an hour for the police vehicle to be used. So keeping with that formula, we would be charging $480 to the casino to have a vehicle there for the officer's use for a 24-hour period. So that's for one day, for 1 week. The breakdown would be payment to the officer, or the officers, $7,560. The FICA would be $578.34. The cruiser fees for the week would be $3,360. And the administrative fee to the general fund would be $933.66.
Can you repeat the second one, the FICA?
The FICA was $578.34.
Is that just the number you gave us before multiplied times 7?
Right, sir.
Okay.
And then the yearly number, the payment to the officers, $394,200. The FICA would be $30,156.30. The cruiser fees would be $175,200. And then the number to the general fund, $48,683.70. A year.
So in a sense, on a daily schedule, you would add the admin fees and the cruiser fees for $603, basically is the profit for that. It's money that's not already, has
Correct,
to go
sir.
somewhere else.
Correct.
Do 100% of the cruiser fees go to the general fund, or is there anything that's retained for
So right now, the cruiser fees go into vehicle maintenance. And given that number, to be honest, that would be a discussion I'm sure to have with the town administrator. $175,000 is an extraordinary number. Given the current cycle that we have with the town as far as a capital improvement account for vehicle maintenance to buy police cars, which we've been on the 2-2-3 schedule, I mean, that would be up for, I would imagine, negotiations between the town and the administration of Twin River. They could buy us the 2-2-3 and still save money instead of having the cruiser there. But that'd be something for the town administrator and the council to consider. I'm done, sir.
Excellent, thank you. Any questions for Chief Joe?
I just want to double check. That was 123.38 was the administrative fees?
For the 1 day, yes, sir.
As I understood it, this was supposed to be done in such a way, and we were supposed to be manned to such a level that this would not cause overtime within the rest of your department. Is that correct?
Yes.
But say an officer or two is at that casino and they get injured enough so they got to be off for a month or two.
Yes.
What's going to happen?
So that would be considered an on-the-job injury, which goes back to my comment about possibly paying that extra $1 or $2 into a workman's compensation fund so we could be covered under the trust.
Well, that isn't what I meant. Now you're down 2 people.
That is correct, sir.
You're going to go into overtime.
Then it would be an issue that I would be 2 officers short. So if those 2 officers, whether they were on the same shift or not, would that be a staffing issue for the normal operations of the department? Potentially,
Well,
yes.
It could lead to overtime within the department. The town's going to be on the hook for that.
Yes, sir.
Right, but I don't know that it would have to be. So I think it could be organized so that you don't use overtime.
Well, probably as it stands now, we're on the hook for it.
No, it shouldn't be, but.
Depending on the number of officers that go out. If 1 officer goes out, we have a minimum staffing per the collective bargaining agreement on every shift of 3 officers. So we have a breakdown of assignment of officers. There's approximately 21 officers assigned to the uniform division that count towards staffing. That's broken up into 3 8-hour shifts. So depending on circumstances, for example, we had an officer just leave. He went to East Providence Police. My promotion, I filled in Chief Blakey's spot. So we have the ability, and I have the ability, to restructure the department in such a way that I can move officers around. So where they have seniority to bid on shifts, the administration and I have the ability to allocate the number of officers per shift. So with that, I have the ability to lessen the impact of overtime. However, given the number of officers that could potentially be out, it'd be disingenuous for me to say that it could not potentially cause overtime depending on the situation. But we do have stopgaps and fail-safes in place.
Chief, that overtime, the officer goes out injured and the trust pays the salary. So therefore, the salary line is essentially freed up to be applied towards overtime should it have to.
They would pay, they would backfill the salary, they would.
Are officers required to take detail work, or do they sign up for it at their discretion?
So the arrangement with this, how Lincoln has done it is the chief has the potential, or the chief has the authority to assign a detail. Twin River wants a detailed police officer there all the time. The way that we run details and have historically in the past, unless it's a public safety emergency. For example, if Verizon's on the side of the road, I'm sure we've all seen it in our travels that, boy, there should be a police officer there or a flagger or somebody there. The administrator, myself, the officer in charge of the shift, has the ability to go to the foreman or go to whoever's on the detail and say, this is a public safety issue. And then we would order back, meaning that we'd make it involuntary for the officer to choose, and the junior most police officer would go. However, in the event that it is a non-public safety issue, which this is still being determined whether it is an actual public safety issue or this is a private detail, which essentially it is. And given that it is a private detail, they have security present already at the casino. So they want a police officer there to enforce law. So that is something that we're still working out with the casino, also with the union, and through myself and the town administrator to determine when a police officer is going to be there. But using Lincoln as the example, they never have a problem filling the detail. It's rare.
Is this also, I know you use Lincoln as a reference, is this
And I'm not, well, Newport's not a 24-hour operation.
they lose it one or two depending.
No, they have no police
They have no,
presence there.
they only use their own private
Don't you remember
security,
Patrick
correct?
Right.
still does that?
Right.
They have their own private security
They
that
do.
they use.
Thanks for the time. Thanks, sir.
So your numbers are based on 24 hours?
That's correct.
And if the casino is not open 24 hours, you would not man it 24 hours?
Correct. So these numbers would reflect that change. This is based on one officer there 24/7.
Is the officer at the casino going to be able to leave if you have an emergency in the town?
It depends on the nature of the emergency. I would say, depending on what's going on, and we've done that in the past, we've had officers on details that, depending on what's going on, we pull them from the details, and we don't have to ask, they just know. They're police officers, you know, they understand if they're on the side of the road working watching a telephone pole get put up, and something happens in town and it's driving right by them, or they're close, they're gonna leave the detail. What our concern, or my concern would be, is issues that take place at the casino. And we make an arrest at the casino, that it's gonna require a transport back to police headquarters. So to process that individual, from what I know in Lincoln, and in speaking with the security officials at Twin River, they are going to provide a lot of the ability for us to do our job at the casino. Access to our CAD system, fingerprinting processing right there on site. So this way the officer or another officer can come, take custody of the individual, transport them back to police headquarters with the assistance of the detail officer, and then the detail officer can go back. So there's not, we're not serving two masters here, that the casino is paying for the detail officer to be present. They want the detail officer present, so they don't want the detail officer to go back to the station after process for hours, which sometimes is what it takes.
So it is somewhat flexible.
Yes, sir.
Do you have an idea of how many arrests or incidents that Lincoln is currently dealing with on
I
it?
do not, ma'am. I do not.
Chief, could, with the current staffing, it works, notwithstanding an issue if someone goes out for injury or what have you that could force overtime. But with the current staff, the ability to have an officer be there 24/7, do we have that?
Yes. Well, remember,
so we will not need to hire an additional officer to basically meet the agreement with Twin Rivers.
No, that has not been forecasted, and that's not the plan. Because they will be paying for the only difference between this and any other detail, National Grid, DOT, Gilbane, whatever it is this one's has the potential to be around the clock, 7 days a week, 365. That's the only difference. Where with other details, we see spikes.
Is there the status, I guess, of what the right term would be, is that for certain detail work that's done with utilities and things, you could have a retired officer man those details.
That's correct. And we're looking into that potential as well.
Would that's potentially the same for Twin Rivers?
That is correct.
As well? Okay.
That's also part of potential negotiations with the IBPO, along with MOUs with area departments. Portsmouth, Little Compton, Middletown.
Any other questions for the chief? And do you have any great insights as to when the casino is going to open?
I would not begin to prognosticate that, sir.
That was a joke. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
I think if we could, Chief Lloyd?
Sure.
Welcome back.
Hello, Chief. How are you?
Good. So the context where we are, we've gone through expense items, discussed, we've done some voting, and we're really trying to figure out the revenue side of things. Have some lengthy discussions and some legal help that we may need about gaming revenue, and things along those lines. But there, in your budget, we're trying to get some sense of looking at detail work of what assumptions are made, assuming it's open, things. So that was the purpose of, we appreciate you coming back here,
No
for
problem.
us to understand that. If we get some handle on saying, yes, what day we're opening, how much of that for the budget year that's relevant for us, should we be considering as we look at these things, and then we'll figure out whether as a committee or through some legal counsel as to what we can, should include.
Okay, when we were asked to put in the into revenues for the year, we didn't have a direction as to which was going in. So I had included what I anticipated as the detail revenue from the casino. What are details? Details are under the Uniform Fire Code of the state of Rhode Island. There's a requirement to have, I can require to have a firefighter on duty. Casinos are entirely different. But let me just go a little bit more into details. Details, we used to do them at the Knights of Columbus when they had bingo and they didn't have a sprinkler and such. We'd have a firefighter on duty. So there is a pay rate within their contract. Their contract is going to be coming up for negotiations. So I had to make some assumptions as to what their rate was going to be going forward. I took what I believed a 24-hour operation, 2 men per day under the Uniform Fire Code, and took what I felt was the income that was going to come to the town from that was approximately $100,000.
That's after paying the officers?
Correct.
So that's the net.
That's the net back to the town for the, well, just as the chief, excuse me, I apologize for that, chief. What the chief just described is that the administrative fee to pay it, the FICA and the other things that come out of it. And then the return to the town was actually what we do on all details right now. So it's approximately $100,000 coming back to the town from that.
Chief, you did say there was 2 officers, 2 firefighters?
That's correct.
Why 2?
The casino has a very different way of operating. Under state law, they do not evacuate. If the fire alarm goes off in the building, everybody stays in place. I can require up to 1 firefighter for every 250 people in a Class 1 occupancy. This also has a sequential alarm system in it that within 180 seconds, the alarm has to be investigated, it has to be acknowledged, or a full-blown alarm goes out. So part of it is under the Uniform Fire Code of Rhode Island, there will be firefighters on duty there. One will be going to investigate the alarm, the other has to go to what we call the enunciator panel and prepare to give the message to either evacuate or stay in place. But we're working is similar just as what Lincoln does and Newport does, 2 firefighters on duty around the clock. They're there for crowd management and for safety.
Chief, that was $100,000 for the full year or starting at
Well, I looked at it from, again, with the anticipation and the discussions, we don't have an exact date. I looked at from September to June 30th.
So for a full year, it would be more than that. This is the
correct
prorated number.
Yeah, it could be, right. And again, that number may change, Mr. Katz, depending on what is negotiated in the contract as far as their detail pay.
And so what accounts for the change? Because in the budget, it starts at $65,000. What accounted for that difference between the $100,000?
I'm not understanding what you're asking.
The revenue sheet that we were given estimated fire detail at $65,000.
Is that what I gave you was 65,000? Then I may be speaking incorrectly. Then whatever the number was on that revenue sheet is what I gave to the treasurer.
Okay, so
I may be speaking incorrectly in that.
So the 65,000 would be the prorated amount for whenever it opened.
Right. That's whatever that number was on that revenue when we did that. Probably a month and a half ago, 2 months ago. You'll have to excuse me. I've been off for the past few days, so I haven't gone in to look at that. But if that's what I put on that sheet, that's what I'm anticipating.
The 100 was probably for a full year.
I think that's a fair guess. Yeah. With due respect to the chief, but the chief knows, I spoke with both chiefs, and part of the reason the last meeting I was a little bit like, what's going on? These kinds of things need to be coordinated. What the chiefs are providing you, the factual information is one thing. The decisions as to what is being negotiated with the casino in terms of coverage is a different thing. And so this is subject to what has already been negotiated or still needs to be negotiated with the casino. And that's really what the town council president could talk more about, so that you know.
So, Chief, as I understood it, again, like in the police department, details at the casino were supposed to not generate overtime within your department.
That's correct.
So are you currently manned to support this?
No, I'm not.
What do you need to do it?
I'm going to look to, in part of the discussions is looking, I've talked to the surrounding chiefs from surrounding departments, and we would look to fill those vacancies within the casino that we could not with uniformed firefighters from our neighboring communities. Again, we would pick up the administrative fee on it. That's part of my game plan for right now.
May I say something? I met with John Taylor, the president of the casino, Mark Russo, the lawyer of the casino, who's representing them for us. We talked about what coverage they would need, and they told me 1 firefighter per 8 hours. And that was the last I knew. Now, I asked them what the state requires, and they said 1. So there's a little bit of a controversy here. I'm not quite sure, but the last time I met with them, which was less than 3 weeks ago, they said they would need 1 man per shift. So in 24 hours, it would be 3 firefighters and 3 police, and that's what I understood. I wasn't alone. Nancy was with me, and Tony DeSisto was with me. And I checked with him as of a little while ago, and he understood it the same way I did. Tony did say that he understood that that's all we need. That's all we were required to do. So I guess what we need to do is really figure this out before we have a real good number. But I have to tell you that that's what I was told at a meeting with them.
Well, I'm sure we're the
Madam President, I can tell you that as of right now, they have 2 members on duty around the clock at Twin Rivers, 2 at Newport, and those were our discussions. And that it's not up to Twin Rivers to decide what they have there. It's under the state fire code that they have to abide by.
It's my understanding that at Twin Rivers, the fire department is right next door, almost. It's right there.
They still have 2 members on duty around the clock.
And what they're telling me, okay, so this is just between me and the chief right now, I guess, but what they're telling me is they've always required 1. And I'm not sure if it's factual what he's saying, but I certainly will look into it. But I'm telling you, as of 3 weeks ago, this is what Twin Rivers told me that they required. And I can only go with the facts.
But this is very interesting to point out that the fire department is right next door.
It is right next door. So what I understood that...
So technically, someone is available so they could concede to a single person.
Right, so I understood there wasn't...
We're not in the same...
What I understood, the Legion didn't even have a firefighter there, but I might be totally wrong about this. But I do know, and honestly, that I sat with them. I asked them what they required because we're in the middle of contract, so it's very important that we know this and that we know the details we need. And they told me 1 fireman and 1 police officer. So if things have changed since then, okay, I will concede to that. But I met with them 3 weeks ago.
Denise, can you give us the state legal basis?
Tony DeSisto could, and I checked with Tony if this was okay that we did this, and he said absolutely. It might have changed in 3 weeks, but the way that we're looking at it is 1 and 1.
Who can get back to Brendan or someone to let us know
I'm telling you
legal
the current
aspect.
facts, and I just talked to Don Taylor tonight, actually, about other things, and I asked him again.
Okay.
And it's 1 and 1. If things change, and if the chief wants to go to a higher authority and say he wants 2, well, that's a totally different story. But my understanding at this point, it's 1 and 1. And that may definitely change. I also, Chief Jones was with me, and he also heard them say that. And I asked Tony, who really had the authority, and he said that 1 and 1 was adequate. And he looked into it for me. Now, if that's the wrong information, I apologize, but
I think
as of
we still would
ago,
want to know what he's.
I will.
Yeah, thank you.
I will look into it.
I know you're busy.
No, it's okay. I'm not that busy.
The chief is basing what he's telling us on what the NFPA says
Well-
is required and what the National Fire Code says is required. Now, granted, the state can probably say what they want and do what they want, but if they do, there might be some legal shenanigans in that.
Well,
But
then we will-
I'm sure our attorney is on this.
Our attorney's on it. We are working with Twin Rivers constantly, and I will assure you that whatever the safe thing to do, we will do. But I can only work with the information that I'm receiving.
What is the capacity and how of
Don't
Twin
even
Rivers?
ask me that, because
And you don't know what
It's
the
over
expected?
1,000 people
he
right now.
knows.
Several thousand people?
It's over 1,000.
It's over 1,000. It's not several, but it's over 1,000. I do know that.
Is it in the state fire code, chief, how many people going to be on duty?
Yes, sir.
And then I will look
That's
into that.
simple.
I will look into that because I asked that at the meeting, and I was told one. So I may be getting the wrong information. I apologize, but that's what I received.
I'm just concerned.
It's really the purview of the council, though, to make sure that everything is safe. So if we decide it needs to be two, it needs to be two, and then we'll calculate that. But it's really the responsibility of the council, the town administrator, the police chief, and the fire chief to make sure that facility is safe. And I will tell you, we will make sure it's safe, and we'll make sure that we hit every single law we need to.
I mean, I'm just wondering, like, I'm not an expert, but it doesn't seem like the fire truck would get there any faster with two men on site rather than one. And I'm not really sure what they're going to do all day.
Well, I will assure you that we will have another meeting and we will discuss this. But I can only give you the information that I was given during these meetings.
What were you saying, Jen?
I was just saying, like-
Chairman?
Jen.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, whether we're using the $65,000 that was in the original revenue, which is based on two people, compared to if there's one person, we're talking about $32,500 difference. So I'm not sure that it's worth spending a whole lot of time on it.
I just want to say
that will be resolved by state law, by the appropriate people, and what it will be, will be. But from our revenue standpoint, we're only looking at 32.5. So out of the total package, not so much.
I just want to remind you that Twin Rivers is so much larger than us. We're like a quarter of the size of Twin Rivers. So maybe they do have two firemen there for a reason, and I don't even know if that's factual. I'll have to check. But they are so much larger than us, and that might be the reason.
I think we're splitting hairs a little bit here as well, because I don't want the chief getting poo-pooed on with bad information. To make one thing clear, and to help address your thing, the state fire marshal's office has assistant deputy state fire marshals in the form of fire chiefs. The fire chiefs are the authority having jurisdiction in their town. The only person that can supersede that is the state fire marshal, and that's limited. So if the chief is saying, the code is saying two, I mean, obviously we're splitting hairs as to legalities, but...
That might be, but the state law is going to be the thing that trumps
Exactly.
anything else.
But the state law gives the authority having jurisdiction, which would be the fire chief, the authority.
Let's
So-
wait for Tony's.
But that's not for us.
Let's wait for
That's what I'm
Tony's.
saying, we're splitting hairs here. This
Right. Let's
isn't
wait for
us.
Tony's backup. I think we
And
need.
I don't know whether we'll have this stuff resolved by, we have a week. So I think for all of us, I think what's most important, there's a bunch of other items that are in there, is whether we can be considering this anyway, in terms of some of our calculations. But I think the net amount that the chief provided us, Chief Lloyd provided us, is helpful, whether it's one or two, and we're going to have to make some judgments, is going to be my guess. What we also need to do is the math for police detail to get a net, because what we got was sort of all the components of that. So I'd ask if there's any other questions for Chief Lloyd about it. We're in between 1 and 2 in terms of the assumptions that it's not bringing on a new person, but that it could be from other local districts that could fill it in. But for the town, the net that comes to the town would be where we would see some benefit. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's a very fair assumption. I think you'll also notice that the rescue revenue is up based upon where we are with the figures, and we really feel that's partly because of the added staff that we've had on the clerical side to help make that happen.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Like, and this is, so I was always under the assumption it was going to be an EMT that was there. I wasn't even realizing it was a firefighter. So do you anticipate that our calls for EMTs will go up with injuries or, calls to the casino?
Most of our, excuse me, most of our firefighters and those in surrounding communities are already EMTs or paramedics or cardiacs. It was an early discussion that I had with the casino when we talked about having it there. These firefighters will respond as first responders to medical emergencies within the casino. There also is a medical room that they've set up for our guys to care for patients. My hope, what I had hoped to do with the casino, was to have enough equipment on hand so that they could either treat and release if they had to, set them up under their own coding per se under the state health department, have them licensed as a receiving facility for local treatments and only have to transport out what we have. I know that in talking with Chief Walsh and Lincoln, Lime Rock, which covers it, they've seen probably about 1,100 calls more a year. I do anticipate more calls. My part of having the detail people there that was going to be able to take care of the medical emergencies was to try to cut down on those calls for us every time somebody had a scrape or a bump or something, having to send an ambulance over there. But I do see there will be an increase in calls over there.
And more third-party billing.
Absolutely. And it would be a higher percentage rate because it would be my anticipation that most of those would be people who are not Tiverton residents, so we would be looking for 100% reimbursement from those calls. Yep.
Thanks, Chief. Appreciate your time.
Yes, thank you very
All right.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I know I saw Representative Edwards is here. Welcome to Town Hall.
Sure, thank you.
No stranger here.
No, not at all.
So the context that I mentioned is we're the stage. We've covered budget expense items here, and it's been the revenue that we've been working on in terms of solidifying, and in particular discussions around revenue related to the casino.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had help from the tax assessor around the real estate side of things that are currently billed with the value in place. We have that. But the gaming revenue, and in particular the timing, is where we're struggling in terms of trying to figure out a tax rate. So anything that you can help us in understanding from your work about when that comes in, and I know that there are some other questions, but that's why.
To that end, Chairman, I spoke with our House Finance fiscal staff, and the state is using a November 1 start date to be conservative. You could go as early as sometime in October, but that might be fiscally imprudent. So if you use a 2/3 valuation as opposed to a 3/4, and the staff were very, very clear to me. They said if you use anything greater than 3/4, you're at great risk. And the state also has an interest in the casino opening because, you know, they're deriving the lion's share of the funds. So they're watching the number pretty closely. They will have a better forecast with the May revenue updates, but she told me for this evening they would use a 2/3 valuation.
2/3 of the valuation of, so
Of
looking
your,
at a full calendar year.
If you're looking at, you know, say we'll use for raw numbers, if you're looking at $1 million income to the town, you would say you in the first year, this fiscal year, you would say you achieve 2/3 of that.
Right. So a normal full year would be $1 million then.
Take 2/3 of
we're
it. Now,
assuming
that should be the income. It's a safe number for the town.
One question, and whether you know or not, is when do the municipalities get the money?
It's a quarterly payment, from what I understand.
And I think it ends up, I think, being important as even within that. So in other words, if we had, let's assume a January 1st open. I know you just said November 1st, but just to make this easy, we have a full quarter worth of activity at the casino. We would get paid for that first quarter, January, February, March.
Sometime around the end of March.
The end of March. Okay. So that helps in terms of would the money for prorated for a November and a December
Coming around the first of the year.
I'm sorry. It would toward the end of March, January, February, March, or would it be toward the end of April?
I know they pay quarterly,
So-
so if they would pay on that quarterly point. I don't know how long the state takes to pay,
Because I would think,
but they would definitely be at the end of the quarter, where you would not receive it during the quarter.
Brendan, I have a question. How about the hotel tax, the hotel tax? How quickly is that paid once it's generated?
I can
and
find
the
out
food
for
and
you.
Beverage? And then I also have a
Tiverton
question.
has not had any till now, so it's going to be a good thing for the town.
My other question is, how do, and you may not know the answer to this, but when the casino comps things, such as hotel rooms, meals, things like that, is there still a tax that is generated that would go back to the state in addition to the town? Or if they give something away, which is casinos, they want their players to stay and they comp these types of things, does that work, and is there a state requirement? Because obviously, I think Twin River does it, but Newport doesn't have anything.
Twin River does do it.
So if you zero out a room, do you?
Casinos are well known for doing it. There's a certain amount they do. I do know that, I don't know how it's going to work with the town, but I do know on the state end, the state is always looking to get their end, and the casinos look to not pay on that amount. Because it's an advertising thing they're using. They're not deriving any income from these free gaming or free hotel stays. Anything they comp, they're not actually getting anything from it. So they're trying to make sure that their overall share is not affected by that.
So then what we factor in for hotel tax, if they're not required to, would maybe less. Right?
Could be. I'll find out.
so, I mean, it's a really good question, because it would be important to know how much of the hotel they comp. Because if they want everyone to stay the night,
that's how they.
You know,
they're Foxwoods.
You got to remember, they're a business as well. You know, they don't comp everything.
You have to play a lot. I mean, it all goes by your play. So they're calculating, when you put that card in the machine, they're calculating how much you're spending, and that equals what they're going to give you off. So there is a balance. You might have put this amount of money in the machine to get that for your room. But I was wondering if there was a state mandate on, even if you comped it out, do they look at their average daily rate for the end of the night and go, okay, you're going to base it on that? Or
Not sure. Twin River does not have a hotel right now.
No,
No,
but
they're building one.
But my question would be not just gaming. Like, I mean, it's common practice to comp rooms in hotels, whether it's for whatchamacallit. So do you pay anything in there if you comp it out?
And this was Denise Surratt's here. Dealing with revenue like this, so one concern would be is that the payment, say, for the last quarter, would we be able to recognize that as income? So in other words, it's due us, but wouldn't be paid until July.
Well,
so I know that's beyond yours.
But I can find out how quickly the town.
Accounting, because it
I
must
can
be
find out how quickly they pay.
Must
the state is not a great payer.
And that to me is part of it.
State's out over 30 days.
well,
So can I ask a question to the treasurer?
Well,
first, please.
Go right ahead.
Good evening. To your question, is we could accrue it and include it as long as I am really satisfied that we're going to receive it. And I guess we're not going to know that until we start receiving the money. But I certainly would not want to include anything in revenue at the end of the fiscal year if, receiving it was doubtful. But I don't know how this is all being calculated with the guaranteed amount. So when Mr. Edwards says 2/3, is that 2/3 of the guaranteed amount?
It's a date thing.
It's a date thing, yeah.
Right, whatever.
So.
Because the state has a guarantee as well.
I have inquired about lead time with paying, if there was any, because they did not make any projections for meals and beverage or the hotel tax when they gave, the state provides me with the forecasts on those items. The Public Service Corp tax, the meals and beverage, the motor vehicle, all of those things are provided to me. And they did not make any provision or increase over the next 5 years. So I'm assuming that they were just playing it safe. So I have inquired about that, but I have not heard back from them. And I asked them about the timing of when would we actually, receive the funds, and kind of just school me in how this is all done. And
So we won't have a clue, really. I mean,
unfortunately, right today, no, I do not know.
We should not even think really about what we're going to get until after we get the first check.
Conservatively, I would agree with you.
We could ask another casino when they get paid.
Could I just ask?
Twin River.
Yeah, Twin River. Are there any other, thank you, Denise.
Thanks, Denise.
Did anyone have other questions for Jay, for Representative Edwards?
Yes.
Yep.
So if the casino were to open November 1 and it's open November, December, would the town of Tiverton be paid by December 31st?
No, you have to finish the quarter. If we November, December, then the state would figure out the money. That would be the end of the quarter. And then from whenever the state pays, say the state's out 45 days, you'd receive it sometime in mid-February. If the state's out 30 days, you'd receive it probably the end of January. But if I would strongly recommend, call Lincoln.
Okay, so the same thing, so January, February, March, the same thing, it would be...
Whatever the state's out for payment dates.
Okay, so it could be April, May,
Could be.
Okay.
But the only good guarantee is it's guaranteed money. It's the state. So you're going to get your money.
So something will be realized in this fiscal year.
Yes.
That's all you can guarantee.
Yes.
Okay, so Chris Ryan, I'm town council. So for both Rep and also for Denise, my understanding was that the hotel was going to open the same time as the casino. Is that your understanding now? Or do
Yes.
you think they're still going to open the same time?
Actually, I went out and toured the site.
Okay.
They're both making great progress. And Gilbane's doing a really good job.
Yeah. So you haven't heard anything?
No, and my day job is construction. I can see them making it.
Okay.
When they're
Yeah,
saying.
I just wanted to, because that...
But you don't want to count on it. And the state people have been out, we have the state, inspectors and stuff going out, they are checking the site. They know when, they have an idea when the building's going to open. So they're waiting for the May forecasts before they change the projection, but they're saying November right now.
Hi, thanks for coming tonight.
Thanks for having me.
I know it's a long ride to come from home. The question,
yeah, long walk.
The question for me is, the one thing I hear a lot of is, we shouldn't count on anything because this might be, but from confidently hearing the state thinks November 1st, I would like to be able to say the town should be able to think November 1st. The town should be in sync with the state, correct?
Yes.
Your opinion.
If the state's figuring November 1st, that's a fairly safe assumption.
I almost want to put that to rest.
And Sharon's very, very conservative. Sharon, with House Finance.
November 1st is a conservative effort on the state's. Okay. Thank
Yes.
you. Thank you.
Any other questions for?
Anyone else?
Oh, just for Denise, I was going to ask, can you Could you
Thank
call?
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Could you call another Rhode Island casino and just let us know if they will tell you when they get paid? Thank you. And then let us know through Brendan or however. Thanks.
I just had one other thing for Denise as well. As far as that lead time on the state paying versus us running into fiscal 20 and assuming we have accounted for X amount of dollars for the quarter ending June 30th, 19, what's the lead time that we have past June 30th?
We have enough time.
Okay. To be safe on our books for the current or the upcoming fiscal.
As a matter of fact, I would prefer it if typically I have either received or have confirmation of receipt before I even book the accrual.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the treasurer?
Can you just explain to me what funds we should expect to receive by the end of fiscal year 2019?
Well, with the November 1st opening,
Yeah.
so that's taking out.
Would we get the last quarter? Would we receive the last? Would we receive
April, May, June?
Yeah.
We would, based on what we just learned, we would receive it any time between July 30th and August 15th, say 30 to 45 days.
Okay.
So yes.
So it would be in the next year's.
If I have good knowledge and confirmation that the money is coming, I can accrue it for the appropriate year.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay.
You know
So
you're
that was my
getting
question.
it.
Can we count it? All right.
So if the check's in the mail, you can count it.
So we could count 8 months.
Typically, we work on a cash basis, which means we don't account for the cash until we receive it.
So that's my question.
I think it would all. I always try to match. That's like a standard basic accounting principle, is to match your revenue and expenses in the time frame that they occurred. It's a little different in the municipality because we don't accrue everything. For the financial statements, we accrue certain things. So that is probably something that I will follow up and speak to our auditors about, and just take a look at maybe what the other communities do. But typically speaking, if we have counted it as revenue, then I would accrue it.
So are there also expenses that are similar that will belong to fiscal year 18-19, but actually don't get paid until August 1st, 2019?
We do take care of those. Everything is included in the appropriate fiscal year. But for revenue, we typically don't, because revenue is received over a 12-month period. So we're always recognizing, we want to make sure we only recognize 1/12 of whatever it is. But in this case, we'd have to take a solid look at what we've done.
So this case is significantly different.
Absolutely.
So it would be prudent not to plan on having that last third, or
I'm thinking that I always err on the side of conservatism. Okay. And I think that was something everyone was concerned about in terms of what we were going to include.
Okay, so what we could really expect to
Perhaps,
have would be November, December, January, February, March. Definitely.
I was going to say maybe six months would be, I think, a prudent move.
That would be 5 if it opened November.
Well, okay, right.
Okay, thank you.
You don't want to include too much, because if it's not realized,
right,
then you've got to start cutting on the other end.
Yeah. Drastically.
You'll be lucky if you see it before May 15th.
Okay.
Denise? So if we did not get the payment in time for the fourth quarter, which I think is what you're asking, the general fund could cover what we need, and then when it comes in, we can replace it to the general fund?
There isn't a cash flow issue, so I wouldn't be worried about that.
So in the worst case scenario, April, May, June, comes in August,
We'd be okay.
we'd be okay?
Oh, we'd be okay cash-wise, yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'm just piggybacking.
No,
You
yeah,
had a great
that-
question. I'm
that's-
just
that's
piggybacking that
useful.
to make sure the town.
You don't have to worry about the cash position
Okay.
of the town.
Okay.
It's really a matter of how we're going to record it for the end of the fiscal year.
Because my brain says November through June, this is just the way I think.
Right.
That we can count on it as long as we're okay with the cash going forward.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I don't know if there was any other questions that we have regarding revenue. Sounds like we'll have some input, as I mentioned earlier, from the solicitor about looking at, and I think a lot of the things that we're talking about right now could be some helpful things as well, in terms of timing and things along those lines. But any other issues? My recommendation would be is we hold off in terms of kind of any vote on revenue until we get a little more information. And if we have more, if we hear from Lincoln, Twin Rivers Lincoln, that they're great payers, they get the money in time that could help us, or if we know not so good, it seems to me that that's helpful.
Well, Mr. Chairman, in reading from Attorney DeSisto's memo, it's all rather moot because I quote, "Since gaming revenue is not part of the budget or budget process as set forth in the charter, it does not fall under the purview of the Budget Committee or the FTR. So if you accept his opinion, then we can't do anything about it.
So I read that letter for the first time today, and I'm indifferent because when I spoke to the solicitor on Monday here at the town hall, he told me otherwise. So to me, that's conflicting.
Well, you can look at this memo in at least two, and probably a lot more than two different ways. One, you can look at it as a careful analysis of the charter, worth what it's worth on its face value, or two, you can look at it as an employee writing a memo to the boss, giving the boss the answer that he knows they want. So if you want to take the cynical view, you could look at it that way, because there are a few little looses in there, because there is a section in the charter that says all miscellaneous income, including revenue from cigarette machines, goes into the general fund. So if it goes into the general fund, it's a little bit disingenuous to say, well, yeah, but that's okay, but King's X, in this case, only the council can work with it. So, you know, it's where you sit depends on where you stand. If you're a cynic, you can look at it cynically. If not, then you can say, Attorney DeSisto has shown us that the Budget Committee shouldn't be concerned with that gaming revenue because it's not in our purview.
Sorry.
All I was going to say is when I read it, one of the things that stuck in my head was where it says non-tax revenue. And then I went back to the revenue sheet that we all got. And my feeling is if it is the opinion of non-tax revenue, then we should go back to this and remove everything that is non-tax revenue.
Yeah, for example,
It can't be one and not the other.
Should we be counting detail income, for instance?
Exactly. It can't be one.
You can't be saying the detail revenue is okay, because that's certainly not tax revenue. You make a very good point, Jen.
Yeah, I mean, And I think that will be a question we ask of him. That clearly defined, and it's noted in there, non-tax revenue. Well, then we need to deduct all of this. It can't be one and not both. It's the same thing when we discussed, we had fire detail in, but not police. It can't be one and not the other. So.
Except that the details are known, because as soon as it's opened, what the details cost and what we'll get from those details, that is a specific figure.
But nonetheless, they're still not tax revenue. And that's what's a little bit bothering about Attorney DeSisto's memo.
Right.
Because as Ms. Jocelyn points out, if you start looking at everything that's not tax revenue, for example, stamps,
copy machine. I'm just pulling things
court
from
fees.
here. Court fees, third-party
Permits.
billing for the rescue.
Bin inspections.
Those are all half of the things on here are non-tax revenue. So how do you exclude only this one item of casino funds?
I agree.
John, do you have any insights?
They're not my own insights. I'm still learning. I did speak with the solicitor today about this because I only read the memo, I think today, actually, this morning. And his opinion is that he stands by what he said in the memo. It's one reading of the charter of language that's there, and it seems pretty unambiguous. On the other hand, when it talks about the other non-tax revenue, you begin to wonder, well, then what you're just bringing up, what about all these other items that are currently in the revenue estimate? And his answer to that is, well, it's a structural flaw in the language of the charter, that it says one thing on one page and another thing on another page, and it really should be clarified and fixed. And I think that's what he's going to tell you when he has the chance to be here. The one other thing I wanted to add is that it doesn't necessarily preclude ultimately for either the other non-tax revenue to be considered or this revenue to be considered. It just cannot be done by the budget committee, because what it takes is the council passing an ordinance to allocate it not to the general fund but to another purpose.
Yep.
So,
thank you. So I'd like to say this. I think our town administrator said it exactly. The budget committee, according to this, shouldn't do it, but someone on the street can make an alternate budget and they can do it.
100% correct.
No,
They can take it from the general.
no, he said the town council, not the.
No. The budget committee shouldn't have any purview.
We don't have the authority.
We don't have the authority to do it.
We don't have the authority.
There's nothing
An
in the
alternate
charter.
budget from someone, a taxpayer,
Right.
No,
Yes.
could not do it either.
only the town council.
No, that's not true.
You could ask the council to.
Yeah, right, okay, but there's a workaround. I'm just,
So it's a resolution.
there's a resolution. It's a resolution.
It's a
It would have to
resolution
be a resolution.
However,
from the council.
will that resolution reflect in the tax rate?
That's a very good
Right.
question.
Right, you can't.
You can't,
Right.
because you don't know what the resolution result
I think I'll
is.
repeat I'm willing to take a gamble.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm willing to take a gamble here because he gave two opinions on it.
Yeah, well, it does get very, I had to smile to myself. It gets to be quite disingenuous that, it's okay to talk about the fact that the casino gaming revenue is not tax revenue, but on the other hand, that's why you always want to hire a one-handed attorney. On the other hand, all those other non-tax revenues, they count. So I don't,
comes up with
you
these
just
things.
have to shake your head and wonder.
So the other thing that's indefinite, this year, since it's not, my understanding is, since this is not a complete year, we will not be allotted 2/3 of $3 million, we will only be guaranteed the gaming funds as they come in. And then the next full fiscal year, then the guaranteed $3 million will start. Is that correct?
I think what Rep. Edwards has said is based on the current projected opening date, we could assume 2/3 of the minimum guarantee, or $2 million. That's, to me, pushing it with the proposal to put $1 million in. The other thing to keep in mind too, and we've heard it 1,000 times, while the paint still smells fresh, this place is going to be slamming. So I don't see, I see it being way more than that. We're being extremely conservative by putting $1 million.
It's actually a good time of year too. Like this time of year is
dreadful.
It's dreadful. It's nice. Well, it's
I have a comment on the two ways you can read the charter. I mean, there's such a thing as precedent in the law, and this is all precedent. This is all being used for revenue, right? So that means you can use other types of revenue too. This is all being used as revenue that's not this non-tax revenue. So that's a precedent that would support. I don't know where Tony DeSisto is coming from, because you definitely have to use the towns, what they've been doing in the past. So I'm probably going to talk to him myself on why that is what he's saying.
Well, it's also something that most of those items, when you look at them, are services provided by the town. Fees that are charged. If it's detail work, they are employees of the town that are doing it. I do think there's actually, saying that the town is generating this money. I know it's not tax money, but it's a fee.
No.
It's a different thing. And
landfill revenue?
Can I finish? In terms of gaming revenue.
I don't see that.
That's my own personal opinion. I think we can argue till we're blue in the face.
Yeah, gaming revenue is.
I don't see that.
It's money from a different service, not from a corporation, not from a service that's being provided by the town.
Well, if I could say one thing.
I don't see that.
When I ran for the charter review, I was told that no part of the charter review would have anything to do with casino or revenue. If anyone's been reading about what the charter review is doing, a lot of their doing is proposing things about changing the charter to include how the revenue is going. I can only speak for Dave and Jen because they ran for charter review like I did. We were told specifically we had nothing to do with that.
With casino revenue.
Correct. Well, I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but people that know. And, one of the account numbers on our revenue is 4999. It's miscellaneous income. It's zeros, but can anyone define what miscellaneous income is? Miscellaneous? Sorry.
You have one more person.
Sorry. I was looking.
She has an answer.
Sorry. On the bottom of page 2, 4999.
Well, we use miscellaneous income. You'll see that each department has a 4999. And to be perfectly honest with you, we try to anticipate every type of income. And sometimes something comes in and it doesn't fit in any of the other categories.
Like casino revenue?
No, that would not.
Wouldn't be.
No. In my opinion, no. That's like, a few months ago, I got a check in the mail for like $11 being paid for. I remember coming up to Nancy and saying, I don't even know what this is, but some organization was paying us for. It wasn't necessarily for copies. It was some kind of auctioneering or some odd kind of revenue, and that's what we use strictly. You don't typically see big numbers in the miscellaneous line item.
Thank you. I just wondered what that was.
Oh, okay.
Well, let me say something. I said this last meeting, and I'm going to say it again. I understand what's driving what some of you want to do. You want to lower the tax rate. Fine. But I don't want to do it in such a way that I am using money that I have not seen, that is not in my bank account, that I'm not sure I'm going to receive, and I don't know how much it is. I am totally totally opposed to doing anything like that. If you do, and something goes south, the people that are going to ultimately pay are the taxpayers again. You're going to save them maybe a couple of dollars on, a couple of pounds. Instead of $17 a thousand, we may get it down to 15. And then you may have to go back and say, oops, we want it back.
Well,
I would much prefer that we had solid numbers, that we were guaranteed, that's the checks in the mail, it's not going to go away before I do anything like that.
That worked out for previous approved budget committee budgets.
We pretty much knew what we were getting. This is a whole new ball game.
This is a huge.
We never.
I'm sorry. I don't even know how to get, I need a
I have
flag or
another
something over here. I totally, on one side, I totally see your point, Mr. Edwards. On the other side, the problem that I have with trying to figure out whether we're doing the right thing talking about this dollar amount is we, from what Mr. Edwards just said, Representative Edwards just said, from what Denise Surratt just said, we know something is coming. And what's going to happen when that money comes in is it's going to go to the general fund and sit, and not back to some people that do need relief. We're all reading about the assessments. We're all reading. I'm looking at how much my home went up and how much that's going to cost me. I'm just one family. So, I am an advocate for a lot of the things in the budget. I am an advocate for schools. I've said that before. Police, fire, all of that. But on the other side of it, coming from a family that has 2 children, a husband that works 3 jobs, and I work full-time too, I would like to see some of that come back to us. And I'm sure I'm not the only family or seniors that are in that situation. We know something is coming. What is the right number, and why can't we use it? Instead of letting it sit there it's just padding the general fund.
Well, I don't think the town council would just pad the general fund. I think they would.
We know it's going there.
All right, this is the last thing I'm going to say, I promise, Brenda, okay? But another thing you could do is calculate what's over the 3% in the general fund right now, which would be $416,000, knowing that you could take that, keep the 3%, and know there will be revenue coming in. So the general fund will build up. We took 75 out to make our budget, but if you take the 417, you have that number. This is just a suggestion that you don't have. And then you have the 3%, knowing that we know there is going to be revenue coming in, so that our general fund will build up, but you are taking money out of the general fund to relieve tax. But in a way, but that is a defined number. You know you have 416. So even though it's not the amount you wanted, Michael, but at least it's something that wouldn't get us in trouble in the long run.
Everything, I'm sorry.
And to Mr. Edwards' points, that's money that's already in the bank.
So here's another question.
That's the number I got.
Do you still want me here?
Yeah, stay
Okay.
here. This is a question on opening. Say this is a brand new building. It opens up. The electrical system goes haywire and it burns down the first day.
It's their responsibility.
So are we covered by insurance?
I'm not paying for that, Jen. I'm sorry.
Are we covered by? Well, no.
Right. So they're no longer functional. Is that what you're saying?
So it's no longer functional. So I'm just like. No, I know. So we don't want to do what Jay's saying. What if the worst case scenario, we don't want to overspend money that's not in there.
It's just a suggestion. I'm not saying I'm encouraging it, but if you wanted another avenue to this, you know you have that money in the bank.
Jennifer, can
and
I
we
play
know.
devil's advocate?
Yes.
What if no one pulls a permit fee for the whole year? What do we do? Because we have permit fees built into the revenues.
You're right, Mike.
If no one pulled a
Yeah.
permit
Just
over
kind
here,
of- It's not
an exact
we don't. I get what you're
science.
saying.
Yeah.
You're being really conservative, and I appreciate that. This is the good type
Well,
of.
but it's just
I
this
know.
is a big.
What
it's
if a
not
tornado
little
touched down
mistake.
that's never happened,
It's
but it
like,
went on Twin River and
you're
tore it
not.
apart?
We're not gonna. It's like there's one thing of having a leak in a boat, and there's another thing having
right, Alex?
being hit by a torpedo and saying, like, you know, they're two different things. You can plug the leak. But
My feeling on that is if the state is going to put it in their revenue, I want to put it in our revenue. I mean, you heard Representative Edwards said November 1st, the place is going to be open. The state thinks November 1st they're going to start making money on us. On us. They're going to make money on our land here by people coming here to gamble. Why aren't we going to take any revenue out of it? I don't understand that. Why give all the money, let the state take what they need, and we don't take anything? Just think about it. We're not budgeting any of that money for anything for a full fiscal year.
Mike, they're taking a gamble too. You realize that they're definitely taking a gamble too. So,
I mean, the state's gaming, the state's betting on their gaming revenue. They might have a much bigger stake in this. They're going, okay, we're budgeting for our gaming revenue as well. It's included in theirs. I mean, they're going to generate.
But they have a better way of making up for it if it doesn't happen. So,
That's a stupid question. Would you go
Bigger
on buy a
budget.
house full of furniture thinking your husband's going to get a raise? Yeah.
My husband wouldn't let me buy a house with a house full of furniture.
thank you, Brenda.
Mr. Cody, I'll have
Thank you,
Matt come
Denise.
Thank you, Denise.
Well, I think we've got a
I have one question for Mrs. Surratt. Is the 419,000 the correct number for over the 3%?
416.
416,756. You're sure about that last six?
There's no decimal point move?
Is that rounded or whole numbers?
and that's a
I don't work with decimals on that.
Say that again, please, Mrs. Surratt.
But then, will that go down by?
Well, I think the premise is if we were to use that, then anything that came in from the casino would first go back to repay the general fund. And then anything over and above would be a surplus.
How about the detail from the fire and from the police? How does that differ from the gaming revenue?
What do you mean?
So, for instance, Chief Lloyd has it in this revenue sheet, but yet the first draft, Chief Jones didn't. So, are we thinking right now we're taking that 65,000 out of here, or adding in what Chief?
I mean, she might be able to help us look at that, but that's our big question.
That's your question. Anytime you include anything in this, your revenue estimate, it's exactly what it is.
I'm not interrogating you.
Oh, no, I know.
But you knew on this revenue sheet the fire in here was with the casino revenue, correct?
Yes.
No one had a scary feeling in the town hall about that?
No, and the department heads provide their estimates to me, and I pull this document together. And, we had the same questions, but it's not up to me to remove an estimate, from the fire chief. But I would agree, if you're going to have it there, you should have it. It's either all or none. If it's in, it's in.
We all knew it was here, from administrator to town council. We all knew that was here.
Right.
But it wasn't something, and that was clear, that Denise had mentioned before, that they weren't endorsing it. They have not included to date any of the gaming revenue, and she was not comfortable with Chief Lloyd's estimate.
But that's state. Somebody approved it.
No, but Nancy Mello said it was known that it was estimates.
It's known it was in there, but
estimates.
The whole thing is an estimate. 50% of the taxpayers in town could not pay their taxes next quarter and say, guess what, town? We're not. Guess what?
I mean, these are estimates
based on historical
yes
experience.
History. Right.
And any time you don't typically see a huge variance in these numbers, except, like building permits. When we knew if the housing boom, they might project a little higher number, or if any of the rates change. Those things we were able to project them. But this is all based on historical, actually what happened.
And expenses you can manage, you can't control revenue.
Yeah. And Mrs. Surratt, bear with me one more time. 416,000.
756.
756. Thank you.
And 0 cents.
And 0 cents.
Denise, do you have, when
It's not really that funny.
Chief Jones was giving us his numbers, the cost of police, FICA, the cruiser, and the town administration fee. Do you know what parts of those?
Did he pass this out to you?
No.
No.
Oh, okay.
So do you know what part of those fees could be counted like they were with fire? So
It roughly works out to about 13%
Of the
that
total?
comes to the general fund right now.
So when you add up those 4 items, multiply it by 13%, okay.
Denise, could I also ask you a question? So I come back to the hotel tax line. Obviously, there's no hotels in Tiverton, so where we generate that, I'm assuming is from like a home away, Airbnb, which if you rent a whole cottage, the town gets 1% of the total cost collected. If it's a B&B, or if they rent a room in your home, you get this full 13%, the 7% sales and the 6% lodging. So that's where that $1,500 would have been generated from.
The truth of the matter is, the first time that the hotel tax appeared for us, the state had projected, and I don't know where they got this from, like $9,000.
Right,
And
you don't have enough. I looked at Airbnb. Well, and here's the thing too with Airbnb and with HomeAway. There's listings on there where people advertise what the tax is, and there's people on there that are advertising it with no tax. So whether
Right.
they've gone and actually filed, but Airbnb
This
booking
is all
site.
the honor system right now.
Exactly, until more. But my question is with an actual hotel, 90 room, is it 90 rooms?
I thought it was
Something
80,
like
but
80. They're on that property, they're per room going to collect the full 13%, the state 7% and the 6% lodging, which I think the 6% lodging, the town would get 25% directly to the town from that, from each whatever's collected. So what's a reasonable number that we could bring that? It's got to be more than that.
Right, but I couldn't tell you right now, standing here. I mean, I'd have to look at some kind of historical data for an 80-room hotel and occupancy. It's beyond.
And there's nothing for this market to compare it to.
Nothing.
And they're also with the comps, like.
Well, that was well, that's why
Like, how
I
do you know?
specifically asked the question about the comps, but there has to be, I mean, it's definitely not going to be $1,500.
Right, there
No,
has
I
to
mean,
be.
personally, the way I looked at those items is that is surplus for us. A bonus opportunity, especially given the first year that we don't know what we're going to get. And, you know, that makes me smile, but I mean, I understand the dilemma that you are facing. I know, but, you know, given we don't know what it is, it's for us. I mean, you can look at what other communities get, but even in the surrounding areas, I mean, Newport, Middletown, Portsmouth, you can't compare because there's so many more.
But not even that, you can't compare the other markets so different.
So it's like 2019 is going to be.
Right next door.
There is?
The Francis is building one right next to White's.
What are they building?
The French.
Oh, the Hampton Inn.
He's building a hotel over there.
Another one.
Yeah.
Right next door to White's.
Well, that's
Interesting.
interesting and would affect.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Here, yep.
Any other questions? Okay.
That's all been very useful.
So I'd like to move on. Item number 4 was on our resolutions, and there may be some others that would come up, I think in particular, as we think about some of these revenue things. But I just wanted to close the loop on, when we spoke on Tuesday night, we had some issues about how we wanted to deal with the paving and drainage. And some of it was just a minor issue, it's just what the account number was. And I corresponded with Denise, and she would recommend that we use the same account number that was last year, which was the 5540-6794, which is that combined account, rather than where it's showing on the docket right now, which is in the 0980 account.
Great, that's great.
So a small thing.
But
It's just that not small in terms of whether we want to approve it or not, but we were just trying to figure out what to
because I don't
call
think it appeared on the docket.
It is.
Yeah, it's on here, it's right here.
It's on the first page.
No,
Right.
not where we'd asked for it to be.
I don't think there's any question about what the line item is. It's just what the lead account number is. And it's not duplicated. Or
okay.
So
next page.
So are you saying give it the 0980?
No.
No, the 0980-6794?
No.
You're saying keep it the 5?
Correct.
540? Okay, so it doesn't exist in here, I'm pretty sure. That, do you hear?
Correct. It's
so-
listed.
So it's here.
It's here.
It's here, but it's not, when you go to this account, 5540, it's not there.
Because he moved it here. He dropped the 4 leading numbers and just changed
Right,
it.
so I understand that it's here, but if it's going to be in this document needs to reflect the numbers that are in here, right?
Right, we're moving it.
It will be moved.
It will be moved.
So it'll be moved to 5540.
Yes,
Okay,
it'll
thank
be
you.
moved.
In fact, oh my, hold on. Oh, sit in your seat. Sit in your seat. I think it's going to happen. Wow.
It's in the one that Nancy did.
In the new version?
That's the last version.
All right, thank you very much.
It's in
Okay,
here.
I see it.
Yeah.
So our town administrator, we have a copy of that just for our use, but it is in
There it is.
town clerk.
On page 10, under operating expenses,
Okay.
we have about a third of the way down, paving drainage account restricted, 6794, and it's under the department heading of the 5540. Okay. So when we get to our resolutions, at least we know we have that. And I guess that would be something in terms of the, think about one is what we had in prior year was resolution to restrict the funds. And then there were companion resolutions that allowed surplus within the municipal budget, that 25% of that surplus would go into that account. So it's a question for us as a committee, do we want to have a similar resolution this year?
If it's already in the budget here, and it's already called restricted, why do we need to have a resolution?
What this would do, the mechanism that we put in here was because that account didn't have much money in it in the last year. And the hope was that if there was any savings within the municipal account, that we would make sure that some of it went to paving and drainage.
It's restricted by resolution.
And resolutions only last 1 year. So it's only
Oh, so it
restricted
just
this year,
become
so you have to
restricted in here because it has
resolve
that.
it again. So one of my questions is, on page 10, under drainage account, for this year, there's 120,000. If that doesn't all get used, then money would be.
No, that's not approved, the 120,000?
Oh,
It's
oh,
requested,
okay,
it's
it's
not approved.
requested. Okay, all right, never mind. So right now, there's only, okay.
If they were combined, so that's
Combined.
And didn't we also have a resolution that said if there was anything left in the public works account, it would go to paving and drainage?
That's what I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Is that
Okay, all right, sorry. I just wanted to make sure everything was going in the right place.
Correct, but we also had, last year, the budget that was approved was only $5,000. So what we were trying to do, if I recall properly, was to say, if we have any good luck, we want to make sure a certain portion of the money from the municipal budget could go to help do drainage. We now have what we've approved is $335,000 to go to drainage and paving.
Okay.
And it's restricted only for that purpose. So the question still remains is, do we want to, if there's a surplus on the municipal side, do we want to direct a certain percentage of it to paving and drainage? That's where the history of these resolutions lie.
And the roads are so bad, there probably won't be any money left.
Well, so because we approved so much more, are you suggesting that we don't need to do this? Is that what anyone?
I would absolutely say we're
Yeah.
restricted. He's not saying-
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I'm asking, I haven't.
Yeah, we definitely want to
It's just 20, it's
restrict it.
25%. Before we didn't have, like he said, we didn't have that much. Now we've approved 335,000, it's a lot more.
Well, it combines two accounts. Well,
I know, but
yeah,
that's what I'm
okay.
saying.
Two different line items,
But
or
wait a minute, didn't Bill give us, even with that, like a projected of how many streets could be done?
he did like a 5-year plan.
5 years, like there's only like so
Yeah.
many.
And that's his plan, so that if he runs out, then those streets get moved to the next year.
Next year.
But even with that, it wasn't that many streets we did per year.
No.
Even with that dollar.
That was just, that was,
Wasn't buying a lot of tar.
that was not including repairs to
Repairs to- right.
potholes and
Yeah.
those kind of things.
So, Mr. Chairman, are you looking for a motion?
I would absolutely entertain a motion. I mean, what the issue is saying, we as a committee want to place a priority on it, that the town has a surplus, that 25% of the surplus from municipal operations would go to paving. We're in a different situation than last year, but we obviously have the need.
So we need to combine 5 and 6.
Right. Can we make a resolution that would read number 7, resolve that account 5540-6794, paving road repair, and account number 5540-6795 drainage account that are both restricted could be combined to move money between the two?
You're eliminating 6795 money. We only have one account now.
We only have one
So
account.
I think if it's the will of what people want to do is 5 and 6 just goes to one resolution.
Yes.
Because they're now one count. Number 7 is going to say, money.
Strike 6.
You say
Right.
the same thing.
It would say, correct. Number 7, as it's written right here, would say the same thing. We would just update the date and the account number.
Right.
And do the similar in 8. Both of them, one is saying that there's money left over, it gets to go to general fund except for 25% going to this, and then we're saying we take the 25% and put it into this account.
We're striking 6, but we're adding drainage to paving road above in 5.
Correct.
That's correct. It's going to read, so I think
That's
that's,
okay.
right?
Yep.
The new resolution should read is resolve that account 5540-6794 paving, drainage, road repair shall be a restricted account to be solely used for the purpose of paving, drainage, and road repair.
That sounds like a motion, so I'll second it.
Okay. Any discussion?
I have just one comment. On the new account name, it says paving drainage account, but do we want it to say paving road repair drainage, or, because you want to match the resolution name to what's in the docket, so.
So
I mean, 'cause-
what's
yeah.
written right here on the docket isn't,
Last year it was paving drainage. Didn't match last year, I guess.
Last year was paving road repair, plus an account for drainage. Now it would read paving drainage account.
Oh, they changed it, they just changed it. That's
I'm looking
kind of
at
odd.
5540.
Right.
On the general ledger,
Yep.
it reads paving account is restricted. So we know that it is used for paving and road repair. And now you're combining it with drainage. So
Right, but I'm just asking about the name. Do we want to have road repair in there, those words, or not? Does anyone have any opinion?
I think we could get rid of road repair and just say paving drainage account.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's why if we
Okay, that's fine.
what our line shows on here,
Yeah.
5440.
So I would just want to make the comment that on that wording that you mentioned, Brendan, just take out the words road repair.
That's fine.
Okay.
Okay. We're taking out road repair?
Yep. So repaving drainage account.
I do.
Is that the new motion? Or is that an amended?
It's an amended, I'll make the amended
Move along
motion.
here. We're-
Let's go.
So I think, unless there's any other discussion, can we, I'll call for a vote for the motion with the amended language. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, so we got 10 zip. Motion carries. And then I would have the next resolution be resolved that any unencumbered funds as of June 30th, 2019 will be returned to the general fund with the exception of Public Works Department operations, unencumbered funds that will be placed in the restricted paving drainage account. The number is correct, 4540-6794.
And
Strike the
then
rest.
strike the rest.
Period.
Right.
I second that. That was your motion, right?
Correct, yep.
I'll second that.
Discussion? We'll bring a vote, all in favor? Go 10-0. And then I'd make a motion on the next resolution, resolved that the town, once all provisions of the charter and accounting requirements are met, shall transfer out of the unexpended municipal expense appropriation determined as of June 30th, 2019, 25% to the restricted paving drainage account, number 5540-6794, and 25% to the restricted capital. Oh, wait a minute.
Restricted capital is that town general?
That's a new account last this year. That account number would be 0980-9999.
I'm sorry, say that again.
0980-9999.
And that is a fund off of the general fund as reserved.
For capital.
It's on the budget report, right here.
Restricted for capital.
Yes, so if it's-
And so reading the balance of 25% to the restricted capital, 0980-9999.
Well, I have a question. I thought this was from last year, so we would already have that account. Should already have it. This, but I don't see it on, oh, okay, so where is it on the docket this year? If it should still be there, correct? I don't see it. I'm just asking. Maybe I'm missing something, but. Capital, I don't see
We
999.
don't budget anything more than that?
Yeah, that's a rep. You don't know what it's going to be.
Okay.
It's something you don't budget for,
Okay.
you're restricting money into it.
So you don't put those on here, you just put, okay, thank you.
Do you want to read it again from the beginning?
No, that's okay.
Make a motion?
I made
So-
the motion.
I'll second it.
I'd like to discuss.
Discussion?
Well, so this year we could have a whole lot of money left over, right?
From
This fiscal year that
From
we're
this
in.
fiscal year because of the casino funds.
yeah.
So, do we want to, is that appropriate to put 25% of such a large number into paving and road repair? I don't know. I think we need to reevaluate, consider, well, what,
One thing to keep in mind is it does say charter there too. Once all the provisions of the charter and accounting requirements are met. So who knows what sticks on that side. As far as the charter.
We don't know what changes there'll be, so who knows? It's a good point. I get what you're saying. Could be $1 million in the paving.
Well, also too, that's for June 30th. One thing to think about is the charter review provisions are going to be done in November. They're going to be on the November ballot. So depending on how that vote goes, it may decide where some of that money is going prior to us getting to June 30th.
So,
But this will affect a currently approved budget, though, correct? Somebody? We have that
I
conversation.
think that's a really good question for Tuesday. Is
Yeah.
We make assumptions about the tax rate based on expenses and revenue, and what we
So we
do.
got an answer to that similar today.
Yeah,
The CRC amendments should not
affect this budget we're making right now.
I would
Do you
think
understand
not,
it that
especially
way?
if we've got a voter-approved FDR.
so
Right, but we're talking about
No, not
the
budget cycle that we're in.
Yes.
No, I'm not saying. Maybe I'm not.
So
being
whatever
correct, but no,
is
okay.
passed in November regarding the charter won't affect fiscal 2019.
That does
Okay,
make
because that would
sense,
be
yeah.
ex post facto.
The point that I was trying to make, though, is about unused funds or unbudgeted income, like what we're talking about with the resolution going to this fund or that fund. If there's a decision made not outside the budgeting process, but that money may not be included in the budgeting process, would it run over into these accounts? So what I'm saying is that it would.
Don't forget, this is unexpended, only on the expense side.
Expense side.
So this is only budgeted items.
Right.
This
Not
is
from
not,
revenue.
this
Not
is
from
not
revenue.
any revenue. Okay, all right, then never mind.
Expense.
Okay, thank you.
She's testing us.
No, I just am trying to understand it.
No, I
I'm
didn't
not-
understand that either, so
Okay.
that's.
Okay, good, thank you.
It says expense appropriation.
So you made a motion.
Right, I think do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. All in favor? All opposed? Carries 10.
Maybe the town should buy lottery tickets.
Are there any other resolutions you want to discuss, propose tonight?
I know my question's a little late. I should have asked it earlier. The restricted capital expenditure account, what is that for?
I think the idea of that account, which was established last year with the resolution,
Right.
is to allow us to build up some kind of capital reserve in the event we need to purchase a piece of equipment, so that we're not taxing the people for it. So just as,
Municipal equipment?
Could be, right?
I don't think all of the details of how.
But if we had some type of emergency.
Right, and that's,
Exactly.
I think that was exactly what we talked about, because we were buying and paying so much interest. So it was just to kind of get ahead and to be able to have
Was that
a
used
cash
last year?
flow.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
To be able to have cash, so that if we had a fire engine go down, or a police cruiser, or water heater, or roof blew off, that we had money to be able to expend and not have to go out for bond or to borrow.
So was that used last year at all?
No, we just put the money into it.
How am I supposed to know what's in there now, then, if it's not?
There's $24,999 in there. You'll see it on the 993. Excuse me.
Where is it?
On the monthly reports, it's included on here.
It's not likely to be a lot of money anyway.
Monthly
Right.
reports.
Last year, we had, after everything was said and done, and all of the charter requirements and the accounting issues were resolved, there was there was like $99,000 of unexpended funds left over. 25% went to this account, 25% went to paving, and the $50,000 or so went back to the general fund.
The monthly reports you're talking about, where do we get those? Online? Where can I see those?
These are usually the second council meeting of the month, if you go on Clerk Base.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Denise. Thanks.
Okay, moving on to item 5. Any correspondence or documents to hand out? We don't have an update on site visits because we decided that we were all set. So we'll move to the minutes from Tuesday's meeting, 3/27. This guy is cranking them out. Thank you.
Doing my best. Thank you for printing.
Jay, what did we do on 3 and 4? Sorry? What did we do on 3 and 4 last time? Can you say?
We voted on it.
Why, does anyone that?
Okay. All right, we did do it. Okay. I didn't have that. Sorry, thanks. Cool. Thank you. Thank you.
Not like we did here.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I just didn't have it down there.
On the taxes for the people. I'm not against that. So let's have the money in there.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Thanks.
Do you have a new version of the sheet?
I do. Is there the rest of it? Is yours double-sided?
It is double-sided, but no spreadsheet like this.
Oh, his is double-sided.
But none of that.
Ours are not, they'll just defer it to next
All
week.
these are not double-sided.
Copy or malfunction.
All right.
Okay, so let's, we'll table the review of the minutes because we don't have both sides.
Well, Cecil got his copy.
Why can we just don't copy it?
Can we just copy it now?
Depends, do you want like 5 moments?
Oh, it's not open.
Denise, could I use the copy of? We're missing one side. Check this one.
She's gonna count the meter.
Look,
Make sure you leave the water there.
Take it out of our budget.
In the meantime, I can hand out the rest of it.
Oh, wait, on the 49, we added that in, right? To the- That's what I should say. That's not worded. It's not worded correctly.
It was one of those line item changes.
One thing I'd like to note is in the fourth column, it says amount as voted through 3/27/18, which was requested. But that was through the last voting. And I also did include the debt service vote date column of 11-0 at January 25th that was asked to be put in. Okay? Those were the amendments from last time. This should be, as far as I know, including the 1,200 we put in for the medical physical under 3310. This should be up to date, including the 49,000 for the 2 recurring capital for the 650 Ford 650 plows. So this, unless someone eyeballs this and looks it over, this I hope is right.
One item on this sheet is just at the top. It says committee votes fiscal year 2017.
Oh, you're heading on.
So the heading of the whole page
Oh,
needs to
wow, I
have
never saw
the
that.
date.
Where does that come from? Where do I change that?
It needs to have March 27.
That's in the header.
Okay.
Do you have change the header?
I'll look at it. Thank you. I never noticed that.
Should be 19.
Must actually be working today.
So that's 2 years off. Is that what you're saying?
And-
So this ended out last year, wasn't it?
But also it would be good to like, it'd be good to date the sheet.
Yes.
The whole, like,
Thank you.
as per the
I will
date that it
fix that.
was.
That's a good catch.
Jennifer, do you have another paper clip?
Hot off the press.
I've got a new situation. I know, thanks to Jennifer. Jennifer's taking care of me. I need all the help I can get.
This is what we just got, only it has a back.
Yes, now we have a back.
other one of the same thing. Am I supposed to get the back? Oh, thanks. Yeah.
It is now, right? I wanted to.
That's the reason I put the change.
Is this like what you look at this? Did you have we just read that to make sure everyone should be. Motion to approve. Two. The date on the spreadsheet, and we got 7/25. Approved 11 and nothing by Graham and Dakota's and then it was 3.
No, I don't think we had, no, that's right.
So I have a question.
I think it was really the whole thing, because the reason that people on, so we're looking on bullet number 4 in there, that 3 people abstained because they weren't at the 3:15 meeting.
Correct.
So it should read.
So the amendment to the spreadsheet was voted 11-0. I need to make that more clear, maybe.
I think you could just.
The spreadsheet was 11-0 vote, but the actual vote to amend the minutes was 8-0-3. Correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. I want to make sure anyone's confused on that, like I just was. Okay. I could change those.
So we'll take those up next time and vote them with the changes.
It's up to you. You want to vote them with that amendment? You want to wait to vote for next time?
All right. I make a motion.
It's
Wait,
quicker.
wait, I
Oh,
have
sorry.
a question. On the bottom of number 2, or in the middle of number 2, there were 2 resolutions. Let's see. Those, did those pass?
Yes, they did.
Oh, okay, so.
We took them together.
So we took those together.
All right. So I don't know if we, like.
Those 2 reflect that 3 and 4 below. Resolution 3 and 4.
So 1 and 2, we voted on. That was by Cecil.
Yep.
We did 1 and 2. We voted, and then Mr. Katz made a motion for 3 and 4, which Mr. Hollenbach seconded.
And we voted.
And then we voted on those 2. And I changed the dates from 17-18 to 18-19 on number 3 and 4. Oops.
Okay, I'm just wondering that
what we-
it's not parallel, that if we passed 1 and 2, and they're all written out, that 3 and 4 should be written out
They're
too,
written out.
just for
Okay.
consistency.
So I will write out 3 and 4.
Well, I think what we want is on item number 2 is going to read a motion by Cecil Leonard, seconded by DePaul, to amend the first 2 resolutions from 17 to 18. Now read, and then that should be passed 11-0. Because we approved those 2.
Okay, so gotcha.
And then there would be another motion, would be by Kat, seconded by Hollenbach.
4.
I just think since
we ended up deferring on those.
There were no amendments to that one.
Excuse me. I'm sorry. Yep. No, I'm sorry. That's right.
1 and 2 were approved together, 3 and 4 were approved together.
Right. Yep.
So we just need, I think for
Just get-
consistency,
the word
they should be
approved.
written
To
out,
put- to be
and
put
and that it
resolved or
should say
whatever.
that they were approved.
And Michael,
And
the
put
word,
back-
the
sorry.
word include instead, maybe say approve instead. Approve.
Sorry.
Instead of include them, approve them.
Okay.
I think.
Gotcha.
If everyone
Include,
agrees.
instead of include, it could be approve resolution number 3 and 4.
Right, and even 1 and 2 could say amended, the first 2 resolutions approved. I don't know, you can get work that word in, it's.
Amended, yeah, amended and, amended to,
Well, we don't have to say approved, we can just say we voted on it.
yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. Like,
Should we not define how people voted?
that's right.
Yeah, we
just-
should have the
just-
votes.
That's fine, Michael.
Yeah, so I'm putting past 11-0, past 11-0.
That's
I already
fine.
have that written.
That's fine.
I have the word include changed to approved, and these 2 are gonna get written out. Write
Or-
out 3 and 4.
Right, okay.
Anything else?
Written in?
Written in.
Included, okay. Because written out.
I'm sorry,
might-
written in.
Might infer.
That's okay.
the
Written
opposite.
in numbers 3 and 4. I'll use the word approved instead of include. I'll make sure that I put past 11-0.
Okay, great.
That'll help me when I write these new ones from today. Okay.
Great.
Yeah, I mean, they should all be worded pretty much identical.
Okay.
Because that's gonna go on to the ballot, so it ought to appear in the minutes.
Okay, I can change all those.
We, I guess we have a motion on the table?
We have a motion.
We have, so why don't
I
you?
have no motion.
I'll make a motion to, oh, I'm sorry, let someone else do it.
Meeting or minutes or?
What are you making a motion for? We're kicking those back together.
Yeah.
I think we should have them make the changes and we'll look at it next time. We
Yeah,
can
I
do
think
this,
that's good.
pretty quick.
Okay.
All right,
Great.
other business. I think the only thing that I would ask is I gave, when I communicated with the Sisto law, I let them know generally what our issues were, and Peter, the attorney who was here very early on, who told us about the Open Meetings Act and that stuff, he's the attorney who will be here. If any of you want to be the questions that you have and make sure, I think it would behoove us, there's a planning board meeting on Tuesday night at 7 o'clock. So he's got to go to that as well. So we'll have him, I think we can move him right to the very start, 6 o'clock, and get going. But I'm sure it would be best if there are specific questions that we make sure that he's prepared to ask. And it's possible that we need to ask him to come back on the following night if he needs to leave early, but that would be my recommendation.
Tuesday goes to high school, right?
Yes.
Were asked kind of tonight, and then we were called back more for the solicitor. Do you want us to resubmit those to you?
Yeah, I think if you could do that, I'd be happy to consolidate those. I'm sure he would appreciate it, knowing
Yeah, that's a
there's
good
no
idea.
secrets about what we're trying to do. We're
Yeah.
trying to get some clarity on these issues.
Probably help him come along too, if he knows the questions ahead of time, or at least most of them.
He wants to email them to you.
Yeah, if you could individually email them to me, and then we don't get into the email chain type of thing.
Can I just make a quick comment? On the miscellaneous account, on his memo, miscellaneous revenue, I think, or whatever the wording he used, we do have a miscellaneous account in the revenue sheet, so it seems like that would fit in there. I'm going to ask that
But we
question.
never had $1 million in the miscellaneous.
No, I think but that's not what the charter means, doesn't mean $1 million either, so.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor? Thank you.